Hamas says first phase of the ceasefire with Israel complete as talks turn to Gaza's future. Israeli airstrikes hit southern Lebanon's Tyre and Bint Jbeil districts despite ceasefire deal. And Trump signs bill to end 43-day government shutdown, blames Democrats for spending demands.
And then, of course, we have the host tonight, and I just want to thank you very much. There was a reason we chose Egypt, because you were very helpful, and very, very helpful. Everybody wanted to have this, but we really thought it was appropriate, and you are a great leader. And he's a fantastic man and a fantastic general, by the way. But he's a great president, and I want to thank Egypt and all of your representatives for treating us all so well. Thank you very much.
The news in detail. Hamas has claimed it has completed the first phase of its ceasefire with Israel, while the second phase in Gaza's future remain unresolved. Official Osama Hamdan called the deal a preliminary agreement and warned that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's Greater Israel vision threatens regional stability. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said work on a provisional constitution and election laws is almost done, with polls planned once the conflict ends. Since the truce began on October 10th, some progress has been made on hostage remains and suspending major Israeli operations. The Red Cross facilitated the return of 300 Palestinian and 23 Israeli bodies. Hamas has called for international support for Gaza's education system, urging countries and organizations to help students, schools, and universities continue their studies amid the ongoing conflict. In a Telegram post, the group praised recent high school graduates for achieving excellence despite the harsh and horrific conditions of the war, describing education as central to the Palestinian struggle for freedom and a brighter future. Hamas announced that it will hand over the body of an Israeli detainee in the Gaza Strip tonight in Khan Yunis. This comes as part of the prisoner exchange between Israel and Hamas under the terms of the agreement to end the war. Turkey has called on the planned International Stabilization Force, the RSF, in Gaza to provide lasting guarantees for the fragile ceasefire. Speaking in Ankara, officials also stressed that the US-led Civil-Military Coordination Center must ensure unhindered humanitarian aid deliveries in line with the international law. Turkey has expressed interests in joining the ISF despite Israel's objections. The force proposed under a UN draft resolution would secure Gaza, protect civilians, aid deliveries, and support a Palestinian police force. The Palestinian Ministry of Awqaf and Religious Affairs has condemned what it called a heinous crime after settlers set fire to parts of Al-Hajj Ahmeda mosque located between Kifl Haris and Deir Istiya in the occupied West Bank, and defaced it with racist gravity. The Palestinian Ministry of Awqaf and Religious Affairs condemned the arson attack on Hajj Ahmeda Mosque in the West Bank, calling it barbarism driven by Israeli racist incitement and a blatant assault on Muslims. It warned that no place of worship is safe amid ongoing settler and Israeli forces attacks, which is said violate international laws protecting freedom of worship. The ministry urged Islamic and Arab countries, as well as the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation, to act to stop such violations. The Ministry of Health in the Gaza Strip announced that the death toll from the Israeli genocide has risen to 69,187, with 170,703 others injured. The ministry stated that hospitals in Gaza received 2 martyrs over the past 24 hours, one recovered from under the rubble and another newly killed, in addition to 5 wounded Palestinians, without specifying the circumstances of the deaths or how the injuries occurred. For more analysis, we now move to our colleague Riham Morsi in our newsroom. To you, Riham.
Thank you so much, Mona. For further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Al-Ahram Managing Editor Mohammed Azzuddin. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on Qnews. Let's start off by asking you, could the second phase of the negotiations of the Gaza agreement begin soon?
Qnews, unfortunately, the situation now is not is unclear. With everything that's going on over the past few days shows that Israel still wants to keep stalling implementing the second phase of the agreement, even though the US president has released statements that phase 2 doesn't have a specific time and could begin at any time according to the situation on ground. But what we are seeing from the occupation forces and broadening their targets and keeping up with the violations of the first phase of the agreement, and also trying to intervene and hinder the international authorities help with aid delivery and so on, and also intervening with the security forces that will be in the Gaza Strip. This shows that things won't be that easy to start the second phase. Unfortunately, Israel is still trying to hinder and stall aid delivery on a large scale, and even the equipment that they need to remove the rubble, for example, and also all the tents and blankets and so on. And so this means that the humanitarian situation there isn't the best that it could be, as it was supposed to be according to the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, especially that this is all not justified, and there is an unjustified hindrance with starting the second phase. They are even trying to intervene with the forces that will govern the Gaza Strip, and so far we cannot say that there are effective measures, especially from the Israeli side, but on the contrary, Egypt and the international organizations, Qatar, and also the rest of the mediators and supporters of the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, like Turkey, for example, and the European Union want to they want to start the second phase. We've seen statements from them saying that we need to start the second phase, which is the most crucial and main phase here, and things cannot stay in this dead end. We have some kind also of the U.S. government isn't doing its best with pressuring Israel to start the second phase.
As you said there, sir, that the Israelis are stalling towards trying to create the second phase. Now, Hamas has announced that they've completed the first phase of the Gaza agreement. What's your take there? How will things move forward, given that there is a completion, according to Hamas, of the first phase of this agreement?
if we wanna talk practically, I wouldn't use the resistance statement, but I will actually refer to the actual situation on ground. Any civilians, we can we had an agreement that had point about the Israeli forces, the occupation forces withdrawing from the land that they have talked about. They need to withdraw from the yellow line and give them back about 30% of the land that they have taken over. But things aren't going according to this. There are targeted attacks, and there is a plan to attack the resistance officials and some factions in the Gaza Strip, as if nothing has changed. But actually, what is stopped is the full-on war. But there are targets and strikes, and even though they have said they agreed on withdrawing, but actually they want to manipulate Trump's peace plan and keep its forces.
Which kind of brings on the next point here, sir. How long do you think that Netanyahu can evade implementing the second phase of the agreement? Let me repeat my question for you, sir. How long do you think Netanyahu can evade implementing the second phase of this agreement?
Of course, Netanyahu now has his hands full with the with his trial that's going on, and there is a dark future for Netanyahu that's waiting for him on the political track. And so he thinks that keeping his position at the government and wanting to go in the next elections, even if they are early, and having a political pardon will allow him to stay. It will allow him to stay and complete all and achieve all his goals and the far right government goals. And so yes, here there is double difficulty, because even if Netanyahu will be given up for the benefit of the far-right government, but it seems like the far-right officials will take over the next Israeli government. And so Israel implementing the points when it comes to the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement is complicated, and the U.S. has actually a more important role here. They need to put international pressure on them. Israel has actually manipulated and tricked the international community. They said that they agree on the agreement. They took back their detainees, and then they are now starting the second phase. And everyone needs to be aware of this, especially the U.S. that has brokered the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement and have put the Trump peace plan. So we need pressure from the U.S. government and the international community. And of course, Egypt is always making sure that they can send humanitarian aid.
Okay, from Cairo, that was Mohammed Azzeddine Al-Ahram, managing editor. Thank you for joining us here on Qnews. We go back to you, Mona Masabhi, in our studio.
Riham, for the analysis. And back to our bulletin, the UNRWA reported that more than 282,000 homes in the Gaza Strip have been destroyed or damaged, leaving large numbers of residents displaced and without safe shelter. In a post on the platform X, the agency said that thousands of families are currently living amid the rubble in tents that lack adequate space, privacy and basic services as the approaching winter season worsen their humanitarian suffering. The Sudanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs expressed its welcome of the statements made by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio regarding the situation in Sudan. The ministry said that Rubio's remarks send a strong message to other countries following the Sudan peace process, emphasizing that it is time to hold the Rapid Support Forces militia accountable. Spokesperson of the Red Cross in Sudan reported the arrival of a large number of displaced people in Tawila locality, describing the situation as catastrophic. The spokesperson stated that the Red Cross has provided family communication services in Tawila and is working to support local residents while urging international organizations to respond to the country's worsening humanitarian crisis. Sudan's Sovereign Council Chief, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has said that civilians displaced by the conflict chose to move to government-controlled areas in search of safety and basic living conditions. Meanwhile, the Sudanese army continued airstrikes on rapid support forces positions near Nyala Airport in South Darfur and in West Kordofan. The military said its air defenses shot down all drones launched by the RSF to attack the 19th Infantry Division, Merwa Airport and Merwa Dam in northern Sudan. The conflict, ongoing since April 2023, has killed thousands and displaced millions amid stalled peace efforts. African Union Commissioner Mahmoud Ali Yusuf has warned today that Sudan is on the brink of a dangerous collapse, stressing that the suffering of its people is receiving little global attention. Following a meeting with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Yusuf described Sudan's war as one of Africa's most violent and complex crises. Both leaders reaffirmed strong AU-UN cooperation, particularly on the Silencing the Guns initiative to end African conflicts by 2030. Guterres voiced deep concern over atrocities in El Fasher, growing violence in Kordofan, and instability across the Sahel, warning the world not to turn its back on Africa.
And the beacon of hope in a troubled world. At a time when the production and availability of food is being...
The Israeli occupation army has launched airstrikes early today on several areas in southern Lebanon, mainly targeting the Tarfisiyya Valley in Tyr district. The strikes damaged several resorts and blocked parts of the Litani River. According to the national news agency, another strike hit the town of Etron in Bint Jbeil district, specifically in the Khanouq area. Lebanon's National Litani River Authority began on-site inspections to clear the river and prevent flooding that could endanger nearby communities and farmland. The attacks come despite a ceasefire deal that took effect on November 27th, with Israel accused of over 4,500 violations since then. A coalition led by Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani came first in the parliamentary election. The Independent High Electoral Commission reported a 56.11% turnout and said the preliminary results cover 99.74% of votes. In Baghdad, the Reconstruction and Development Coalition received 411,026 votes, followed by Taqaddum Progress Party with 284,109 votes. No single party can form a government in Iraq's 329-seat parliament, meaning coalition building will be key in deciding next prime minister. Iran has opened a missile exhibition in Tehran to mark Aerospace Week. The display at the IRGC Aerospace Force Museum featured missiles, drones, and other military equipment. General Balali, overseeing the exhibition, said the missiles are essential in all areas of ground-to-ground warfare. The Kremlin has said that Ukraine would eventually have to negotiate with Russia, warning that Kiev's position was worsening daily as fighting continues in the east. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters that Moscow remained open to a political and diplomatic settlement, but would keep fighting to protect Russia's security if no such opportunity arose. Peskov said that Ukraine would eventually have to negotiate, but from a much weaker position. Russia has said its forces are advancing towards Pokrovsk in Donetsk, including the western, northwestern, and eastern districts, while repelling 9 Ukrainian attacks in a single day. In Kupiansk, Kharkiv, Russian troops attacked encircled Ukrainian units and seized settlements in Zaporozhye. Ukraine reported 217 combat engagements along the front in the past 24 hours, repelling dozens of Russian offensives in areas including Pokrovsk and destroying armored vehicles, rocket launchers, and air defense systems. Ukrainian forces also struck the Stavrolen factory in Russia's Stavropol Krai, a key supplier of military equipment, causing explosions and fires. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said that EU member states have 3 potential ways to meet Ukraine's financing needs, with reparation loan based on immobilized Russian assets emerging as the most effective. Speaking to the European Parliament, she outlined that the bloc could either use available headroom in the EU budget, have member states raise funds individually, or provide Ukraine with a loan backed by frozen Russian assets. We give a loan to Ukraine that Ukraine pays back if Russia pays reparations, von der Leyen said, calling this the most efficient way to support Ukraine's defense and economy.
It's clear we will deliver and we will cover the financial needs of Ukraine for the next 2 years. The discussion is now on the how.
US President Donald Trump has signed a bill to reopen the federal government after a 43-day shutdown, blaming Democrats for trying to extort American taxpayers with $1.5 trillion in spending for undocumented immigrations. Trump said Republicans had repeatedly voted for a clean continuation of funding and criticized the shutdown for causing flight cancellations, delaying paychecks for over 1 million federal workers, and disruption for federal contractors and small businesses. With the signature, Trump said the government would resume normal operations and vowed to focus on lowering living costs, restoring public safety, growing the economy, and reforming health care, by directing funds to Americans instead of insurance companies. He called the bill incredible and said it would help get the country working again.
For the past 43 days, Democrats in Congress shut down the government of the United States in an attempt to extort American taxpayers for hundreds of billions of dollars for illegal aliens and people that came into our country illegally.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has dismissed reports that Britain stopped sharing intelligence on drug trafficking vessels, calling the story false and saying U.S. operations remain unaffected. Speaking after a G7 foreign ministers meeting in Canada, Rubio said no Venezuela-related military discussions occurred and reaffirmed strong partnership with allies. He also offered U.S. help to India after a deadly Delhi explosion, was concerned about West Bank violence affecting Gaza peace efforts and noted progress ahead of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's upcoming U.S. visit.
Important, and it's been a plague of story after story that's either inaccurate or misleading, and that falls in the category of both. That story does.
China's foreign ministry has strongly opposed a G7 joint statement expressing concern over Beijing's military build-up and nuclear weapons expansion. Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said the G7 was confusing right and wrong by ignoring U.S. nuclear disarmament priorities and the proliferation risks from the AUKUS security partnership while criticizing China. He accused the group of politicizing economic and trade issues and interfering in China's internal affairs. Lin urged the G7 to abandon Cold War thinking, avoid ideological bias, and contribute to international unity and cooperation. Turkey's defense ministry has said that it is too early to determine the cause of a C-130 military cargo plane crash in Georgia on Tuesday that killed 20 soldiers, including flight crew and a maintenance team. The aircraft had departed Azerbaijan to return Turkey's F-16 maintenance crew after they participated in Victory Day celebrations. The ministry said the plane was not carrying ammunition and that its lost radio call came about 40 minutes before the crash. The black box containing the flight and cockpit voice recorders is now in Ankara for analysis. All planned flights of Turkey's 18 C-130s have been suspended pending inspections.
Başsağlığı ve sabır diliyoruz.
That brings us to the end of our news bulletin, but before we wrap up, here is a recap of the top stories making headlines this hour. Hamas says first phase of ceasefire with Israel complete as talks turn to Gaza's future. Israeli airstrikes hit southern Lebanon's Tyre and Bint Jbeil districts despite ceasefire deal. And Trump signs bill to end 43-day government shutdown, blames Democrats for spending demands. For more stories and live updates, follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEGY. From all of us here, many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more news and analysis on Qnews.